Alright guys, I'm going to do something new in my videos. I have decided that I read all the comments. I hope you guys know that. I go through and I read all the comments, and I love the feedback I get from you guys. Whether it be good or bad, I take it either way. And so what I've decided to do is I'm going to pick a comment from the previous video as often as I can. Probably every video, but at least as often as I can, or whenever I remember. I'm going to shout it out in this video, and then I'm going to give you a chance, whoever's comment I choose, to send me your name and address, and I'll send you out a sticker pack. So from yesterday's video, I chose Fly Guy 4130, his comment. I'll leave it right here so you guys can read it. Really appreciate reading the stuff, the feedback. This one especially because, you know, as you guys saw, I was pretty down on myself about the whole weekend, and I really appreciate you guys coming through and giving me some kind, encouraging words, because you guys know on my channel I try to be as real as possible. When things are good, things are good. When things are bad, and I show it either way. And so to get the comments that I got and to read what you guys had to say, there's a lot of good ones I wanted to choose from, but I chose this one. So Fly Guy 4130, send me a message and with your address and name, and I'll get you some stickers sent out. Alright guys, so we just landed in Salt Lake. I need to do a little recap of the weekend. There's some stuff after watching other people's videos and kind of watching back, editing my own videos. Some stuff that we need to talk about and clarify about the weekend. First things first, I'm super grateful for the opportunity I had to drive that car. Mike Midyette and I have been talking about it for years. Well, probably about a year. He's had on his mind to have that car finished and to have some people drive it. And I was on that list of people, and I'm glad that I got to be the first person to drive it. I knew for sure there's gonna be some growing pains, and so I'm trying to reflect on what went wrong that I didn't do well and what can be done differently and what lessons I learned from that. So first things first, which I knew up front, was needing to be comfortable behind the wheel. So we had that in mind, and I thought, okay, let's show up and spend the time to put a seat in and get the seat in the comfortable seating position, because that's one of the most important things, is being somewhere where you're not too close, too far away, being able to reach the shifter, all that stuff. So we did that, got the seat put in place. Mike had been focusing on dyno time and getting his suspension where he wanted it, and what's the other thing I'm thinking of? And I thought he was gonna do the nitrous, but he ran out of time for that. That ended up being a big deal, but at first I'm like, it can't be that bad. I didn't realize the turbo was as big as it was. So I got myself in a comfortable seating position in the car. The next thing I noticed after that was that the handbrake was not how I like it. It was installed at an angle, so it kind of pulled up and away from you, which I've had a car like that before, where it doesn't pull perfectly in line, and it kind of works, it's all right, but it was kind of limited on where it could be mounted in that car. I actually considered, it was kind of late in the day, but I considered cutting it and moving it. I didn't talk to Mike about that, but I was going to bring it up, trying to put it in a better spot, and I was willing to do the work on that. But I thought, you know what, it's getting late, it's not that big of a deal, it will work. That was a big mistake. That actually turned out to be one of the biggest mistakes that I underestimated. The other thing was the shifter was in an uncomfortable location, and so we actually did, if you watch the video, I spent the time really quick to knock out a shifter, and Bailey and I made a custom shifter that fit in there, and that worked. I'm really glad we did that. But in my opinion, one of my biggest struggles was not having a handbrake that I could rely on. It was more than just the handle. It turned out that the whole setup, the brake setup, wasn't strong enough to lock up. So we tried grinding the rotors, we tried changing pads, and it just didn't work.
Tried bedding them.
That's right.
Bled them.
Yep.
We basically flushed them.
Yep. And it just wasn't, there's something about it that's just not, and I've done that before. I've had other cars where I do put all the right parts on, and for some reason the handbrake just won't lock how you want it to. And I've had cars that have all the wrong parts with the cable handbrake, and they lock up amazing. I don't know the secret to a perfect handbrake. What am I forgetting? What was some of the other struggles we ran into? Horsepower. I mean, the drivability of the car.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike did spend time on the dyno getting the car done. He's not a professional tuner. I've tuned my own cars also. I'm not a professional tuner, but I've had my cars run good, so I thought, okay, it's probably pretty good. Now, one of the things about that is that there were some drivability issues. All he had done was put it on the dyno and hadn't done a real track day with it. So even though the numbers looked good on the dyno, everything was good that way, the car was not easy to drive. It didn't have good tip-in throttle response. It didn't have the response that we needed in a real on-road situation. So maybe on the dyno it was loading up and getting good boost and all that stuff, but the drivability was not great on a drift track. And so we kept trying to make changes to the gearing to make up for that, but we couldn't. Our hands were tied on being able to make any changes to the ECU, right? We didn't have access to the dyno. Mike was the last one that touched it. Obviously he's comfortable working on his own car, and so that was his realm, and there's not a lot we could do in the situation we were in. But in my opinion, that's one of those things that really needed to be dialed for the car to be perfect. And like I said, he ran out of time. He ran out of time to do the nitrous and get it dialed in and all that stuff. And so in that aspect, our hands were tied in being able to make that side of things better. Bailey made some alignment adjustments. I don't know everything you did. I was kind of tuned out
A lot.
on all that stuff. But it's almost like the car needed to be taken apart and put right together with everything dialed. That chassis isn't perfectly straight, so there were some things that probably need to be measured and straightened out and all that stuff. But all in all, like I have nothing to complain about the chassis. It felt pretty good. Watching some slow-mo videos, I just saw someone tag me in slow-mo video. The car looked like it was moving pretty well. Obviously, there's things that could be done better over time of testing, adjusting. We didn't have time for all that. So it's kind of like Bailey would come up, hey, what do you think? Does it need this or this? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, just answer. And so I'd give him some answer and he'd make an adjustment. And but I was always fighting something else. So I couldn't really like focus on, okay, is the car actually going where I want to? No, because it won't boost. I can't even get it to go, the basic when I need it to.
Yeah, well, it would boost. It's just the power plant was really narrow. Well, it wasn't really narrow in fourth. Once it finally could load up and spool, it was really, really fast car.
Well, that was that other issue, though. We had the gearing dialed and actually drove pretty good with a 5.7 rear end, but then we lost fourth gear. The dog ring stripped out on fourth gear, so then we had to go back to the 4.8, 4.8, and so we were back to third gear. And then we had a miscommunication with Mike where Bailey calculated the gearing based on 8,500 RPM. I asked Mike to turn it up. I don't think he understood what we were doing with the gearing, so he hadn't turned it up. And so he thought we were at 108, but we were at 99. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's the right numbers. So
we were at the wrong wheel speed and it was too late. Well, actually, we
didn't realize until after we lost the battles.
Yeah.
But I won't say those took me out of the battles. There was a lot of other struggles, but that was just one more thing that added to it. So I guess all in all, what are the lessons to be learned from all this, right?
Number one thing, being familiar with your car.
Absolutely.
Is the most important thing.
I talked to Nate Hamilton for a second about driving the Corvette because we were in a similar situation. We're both driving someone else's car, trying to get comfortable, and he actually moved his seating position. That was the first thing he did when he got there. And aside from that, it's like you don't think about it, but when you're building your car for years and years and years, you're slowly like, if something's not right, you adjust it. So it actually takes years to get really like familiar and comfortable in a car, including seating position and how your handbrake works and all that stuff. You might make adjustments to that. And so jumping into something that's unfamiliar, right? Like his handbrake pulls up. I prefer that. Also. That's my preference rather than pulling straight back. So that was on point, but it was pulling at an angle. And it took a ton of leverage to even get it to try and lock, but it wouldn't lock. It would slow the car and then lock. So if you're trying to initiate on a bank and you're pulling the handbrake, you're slowing the car down, but it's not locking. So you're not getting the slip and slide you need to get up to the wall. And that was my biggest problem was not being able to initiate how I wanted to. I was watching Adam's video, his in-car, and he just like little tug of the handbrake right up the bank. I'm like, that's what I do in my car, but it wasn't working in Mike's car how I wanted it to. So little things like that, they seem small, but I realize how important that stuff is. If your car's not dialed at that level of drifting, forget it. I almost feel like it was a waste of a trip, other than like I'm saying, what can I learn from this? Because I spent a lot of money, a lot of time. We all had effort going into this, and we got almost no result back out of it. What can be learned from it? That's kind of where I'm at reflecting.
I would say that all the right parts have a lot of adjustability. And there's a lot of different versions of the right parts. The combos, not every part you get that's good, you put it on and go, wow, I really like that. A lot of the time you don't. So your car, you should do everything in your own car. Number one. Yep. Number one takeaway.
That's a good point, because then you know what's been done, you know what needs adjustment, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, if you have a team with where everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what's going on, when something needs to be dialed or something needs to be done, it works as a group. That's another struggle I've had this year was having someone different help me out every single round, and a different car, like it's just nothing really works well that way. And I've realized that it's like, I know this is a team effort, right? And you can't go to a competition like this by yourself and expect to have any sort of real results, right? If the car, drifting is, well, all motorsports is different. It's different than like skateboarding, where you just pull up with your skateboard, lube your bearings a little bit, and then go skate, right? Like your equipment is not nearly as important. When you're in motorsports, your equipment is 50 to 90% of the success, right? If you're a good driver, then you're relying on your car because you already know what to do. So I would say having a team that can make a car solid is absolute top priority. And I already knew that, but like this helps solidify that. You come in, you have a car that you're not comfortable with, that's not dialed to your specs, no chance. Like absolutely no chance. And I thought there was a chance, but there's not.
I thought there was a chance too. I thought, okay, S chassis.
Wise Fab, 2J, what can go wrong?
Yeah, and the motor was really fast.
It is. Makes great power.
It's a really fast engine.
The last two engines I've had 3076 and a 3576. Small turbo, small housing, it lights like that. No need for nitrous. It wasn't making 700-800 horsepower, but it had the low end power band of like almost like a V8. And so that's what I was used to driving. When I step on it, it goes. And this car was not that way. And so I struggled to do it. And so me as a driver, I thought I was like, oh yeah, I can handle this. No chance. No chance. And there's a lot of the car that goes into it. You know, the car needs some improvements too, and that's what Mike said. He's like, let's figure this out so he can make improvements on the car. So I'm sure he's back home right now thinking, okay, let's make the car better so the next guy that drives it can do even better. That's it. That's all I've got. You? Anything?
All the power in the world is good, but you gotta average it to the wheels over the whole run. So it's either got to be gearing, longer RPM spread, or just more torque. You got to have one of those.
Drivability.
Got to be able to drive it.
You can't drive a drag car.
But it was a beautiful car, and it really is fast.
It is. It's lightweight. Cool. It's lightweight. It's got good suspension. It transfers fast. It's everything opposite of Trenton's car. But in all reality, Trenton's car for me was easier to drive, even though it was right-hand drive, because the engine had really good response and good power, and smaller turbo, obviously, and the seating position and the handbrake were in a comfortable spot. Other than that, his car transitioned slow. I had a lot of trouble with the suspension, the steering, but like all in all, those little things made it easier to drive for me. So that kind of like gives me a weird perspective about the whole thing, because I thought, how can a left-hand drive S chassis be so unfamiliar to me that a right-hand drive Chaser is more comfortable? Blows my mind, but that's what I learned from it. One thing I forgot to point out is this whole situation that I'm dealing with this year, just not being able to get in the groove and do well with Klutch Kickers, and now the fact that I have officially decided that I'm not going back to Klutch Kickers for the last 2 rounds, all of that is based on the fact that my car got crashed. As soon as that happened, it pulled the rug out from under me 100% for the entire drift season. Like all my plans, everything I had lined up, all my like good luck, if you want to call it that, the car that I prepped for myself, all the effort I put into that was pulled out from under me, and it basically ruined my season. There's no other way to put it. That 100% has ruined my season this year, and I keep forgetting about that how impactful that was, but everything I had planned was based around that car and all the effort that we put into it. So if I keep that in mind, I realized that a lot of this was out of my control, and it helps me to not like get super down about it, because sometimes things happen that you can't control, and this was one of them. That's all I got. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks, Bailey, for coming with me.
Hey.
5.
There we go.
I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.